All right, we are ready to rock. So tonight we're going to talk about how to migrate from Lovable to Vercel. So we are going to talk through a couple different things, especially around the front of what is GitHub, how GitHub works. We're going to talk through reasons why we migrate from Lovable to Vercel. So we're going to go over a couple things there. And yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Let me just make sure we are good. We are streaming. All right, perfect. So let me pull up GitHub really quick, and we will kind of explain what we are going to do. So I'm gonna pull up Lovable as well. Who here has a GitHub account? Drop a one in the chat if you've got a GitHub account. If you don't have a GitHub account, go ahead and make sure and grab a GitHub account. Um, you will want to have a GitHub account tonight to be able to follow along. But let's talk a little bit about what GitHub is and why GitHub came about. So essentially, the big problem with code bases and the big problem with storage and tracking of code bases is that oftentimes they're not that accurate. Not accurate, stable or safe. And when I say stable or safe, what I mean is that as we make changes to our code bases, we need a way to track, manage, version, and store all of that information. So there's something called the Svalbard Seed Vault, and I use this example a lot as what GitHub is in as an analogy for what GitHub is, in that GitHub stores our code. It doesn't host our code. So GitHub is a repository. It is a place where the code can live and stay safe, but it doesn't actually serve our code, meaning it's not like a web server or anything like that. You can't actually use GitHub to display your code to a browser, right? So GitHub is really important in that if the world catches fire, GitHub will be the last thing that goes down, right? So you see Cloudflare going down and Facebook and all these other platforms, but what you never really see having impact is GitHub. And the reason being is they designed it to be an immutable code storage point. And when you store your code in GitHub, you are able to retrieve that. You can never really delete it entirely. You can delete the repository, you can do all sorts of other things to remove it from GitHub. But if the repository exists, GitHub basically ensures that nothing will go wrong, and that if you ever need to retrieve a version of your code, you always have it. So let's take a look at GitHub here. I'm pulling up my GitHub right now, and I will show you how it works. So let me share my screen. All right, so we are in GitHub right here, and I have a host of repositories on the left-hand side. Now, a repository is an individual code space. That means that a repository is like a project. So it could be a website, it could be a piece of software, it could be a number of different things. Now, I have a ton of repositories that I use from, ooh, excuse me, a variety of different projects. So let's look at our high-level hacks repository that I've updated back in November. Inside of GitHub, and this is what it looks like once you've created an account and once you've logged in. you'll be able to see inside of here that you have some commits. So a commit is a save point. So think like you're playing a video game and you have a save checkpoint, right? That's your commits. You have your time since the commit happened, and then you have your files themselves. Now, you also have a README at the front of the repository, which is typically a very descript area where you can showcase what the repository is for, how to use it, how to install the code, all sorts of different things. So let's look at really quick. Let's just look at the N8N repository. So if I search N8N up here, and I click on N8N's N8N.io, I'll have a bunch of different files, and I have a very beautiful README that shows how to install the file, how to install the code base, how to use a bunch of different things. So GitHub's also a share point for us to be able to share our code, um, share our code on the internet. So once you are ready to move your code, and I always recommend doing this pretty early on in the beginning, um, of being able to uh, use like Lovable, for example. So let's go to Lovable and let's look at how this works. So I'm in Lovable, and one of the projects we started last time was Mitchell's Cozy Corner with Frank. And we've already got this one connected to GitHub. So let's go ahead and start a new project. And I'm going to say, just build me a basic website for a roofing company. Ooh, sorry, a roofing company. And I'm going to go ahead and have Lovable build me a basic website for a roofing company. And then we're going to go through the actual process of migrating it to GitHub and then publishing it onto Vercel. Now, Vercel is a hosting service. So Vercel actually serves the code on your behalf to the browser. Um, Michael, if you are having trouble getting into GitHub using Google sign-in, it may be that you haven't signed in previously or linked your Google to your GitHub. You might want to try a regular sign in and reset your password. All right, so we've got Lovable creating our website right now. Now, while Lovable is creating our website, you should have by now signed into your GitHub account. So you should see something that looks like this, and it may be blank. It may be, you probably won't have any repositories. So we'll let Lovable go ahead and finish creating the basics of our roofing website. How was everyone's week so far? Everyone having a good week? Drop a one in the chat if you had a good week this week. All right, we've got a couple people. Yeah, 3.14. Michael had an amazing week. Michael had a pie week. I am also ready for Snowmageddon. I love pie. I was actually eating a candy bar earlier. Huh. Ricardo said 1/2, so we had kind of a good week. All right, I'll take that. I hope everyone had an amazing week. I just want to give a shout out to everybody. One, those of you who stuck around, and I apologize for being late again. But we hit 1,000 community members this week. which really is amazing. So just a shout out to everyone who has been a part of our community. So we've got our basic roofing website. All right. So now that we have our basic roofing website, in the top right corner, you're going to see a little cat icon. And if you don't see the cat icon, you may need to go into your Lovable settings. So click your profile icon in the bottom left, go to settings, and go to connectors. In connectors, you will absolutely see a GitHub connector. Um, and whether it's in connectors or it's under GitHub, you're going to see an area to connect your GitHub to your Lovable account. So make sure and get your GitHub, uh, make sure and get your GitHub connected to Lovable. That is the first step. So once your GitHub is connected in Lovable under connectors or settings, you'll be able to go back into your projects. And in your projects, you'll see this little cat icon in the top left, a little cat with ears and its arm sticking out sideways. That cat icon is GitHub. You will hit connect to GitHub. You'll hit connect project. You will select the project or organization that you want to connect it with. And you're going to hit, just ignore this message, just hit transfer anyway. That is going to give you a GitHub URL. Now, if I were to click view on GitHub, I would now see the code base for my project. It's going to give me information about how to install it and a bunch of other things as well. But that is how hard it is to connect Lovable to GitHub. Um, the benefits, Chelsea, of hosting on Vercel is it's a lot faster. It's also something that uh doesn't eat credits like it does on Lovable. So you can so I prefer in production to avoid hosting things on a core platform like Lovable. Just because I think one, I know it's faster. Two, it's more reliable. Three, I own that hosting and I have control over the code base. It is also good if you want your pages pre-rendered. That is very true, Chris Chase. So another important point is that Vercel has some advantages from an SEO standpoint versus what Lovable does. So your hosting, your SEO, pretty much your speed, literally everything is generally better on Vercel. So I prefer to host my websites on Vercel as opposed to host them on Lovable. So now we went from Lovable, we got connected on the site, and we have now put them in GitHub. Now we're going to go to Vercel. So for those of you who don't have an account, you can create one very easily. You can see I have a lot of projects in here in Vercel, a lot of different things. These are all individual code spaces, right? So individual websites or projects that I've built out. If I hit add new project, what's going to pop up is this roof right site. This is the one that I built really quickly in Lovable. It is synced to my GitHub. How you do this in Vercel is you're going to go into account settings and you would do it's under authentication and you're going to select GitHub. Okay, so that's the easiest way to sync your GitHub to Vercel is to simply select the sign-in method for GitHub and Vercel. If I remember correctly, that should automatically spawn out your ability to sync GitHub and Vercel. So who here is stuck or has any questions? We have one from Erica Bollinger about can you talk more about SEO and when you add page titles and meta descriptions when you first build in Lovable? Absolutely. So you have your core meta titles and descriptions right here, right? But you want to have Lovable add individual pages with meta titles and descriptions, and you literally just tell Lovable what you want to add for each page title and description, or tell it to add it themselves or itself. And Lovable will do it for each page and each page's title, description, and OG image. So you simply have to tell Lovable to do it, Erica, and Lovable will actually take care of it for you. You can also go into the code and verify it's done by looking at each one of the code's head areas. So you have different components and assets, and this is what the head area looks like. So this would be one of the areas that you could find some of that information in. And you have all sorts of other things in here, but the main thing that you need to do is just tell Lovable that you want to add titles and descriptions to your work in Lovable. That's basically it. Drop a 2 in the chat if you are in Vercel. Okay, we've got at least one person in Vercel. Does everyone have their GitHub linked up? Has everyone gone to settings, signed in with GitHub? Perfect. The next thing we're going to do is we're simply going to hit add new project, import. You don't have to do anything else right here. You just hit deploy. And while that's deploying, it's going to build. Now, every change, once you sync your GitHub to Vercel, every change you make in Lovable will automatically sync to Vercel. So the cool thing is you kind of get the best of both worlds. The other reason, one of the other reasons why I really like Vercel over GitHub is it insulates from the client that it's built in Lovable. Now, one of the ways you can do that is go into settings, and this is in Lovable, and turn on hide Lovable badge. Okay, now that the Lovable badge is hidden in Vercel, it should automatically rebuild, which it has already done. And if I click on this, there's no built by Lovable badge in the bottom right corner. It also says roofrightsite.vercel.app in the top on the URL bar because I haven't configured a custom domain. But what it doesn't say is Lovable. And that's important because there is kind of a little bit of a stigma against building websites in Lovable. People think that maybe they're less quality or they're not going to perform as good or they were too easy, and you can't charge as much money to people if you show them that it was built in Lovable. So I push the sites always to Vercel, especially when demoing them to clients, to keep them from seeing that I built the website in Lovable. It adds kind of a wow factor to it. When they go to vercel.com, all they see is information about a hosting provider. So there's a lot of advantages. Now look at how fast this site is, right? I refresh it and it loads almost instantly. Let's actually take this site and put it in GTmetrix, which GTmetrix is the website that I use for benchmarking other websites. So let's drop this in GC metrics. And we should receive probably a B score, an A score. There we go. It loaded 100% perfectly in Vercel. 100% perfectly. That is next to near impossible to achieve with any other hosting provider. The setting for hiding the level badge is under settings. So you click on your roofing or you click on your website name, you hit settings and you turn off the lovable badge. So you flag this on so it says hide lovable badge. So it should be white highlighted. But yeah, so it ranks 100%. It loads in half of a second. That is perceptually instant to a human eye. And this is on a standard connection. This isn't souped up. This isn't fancy. This is free in Vercel's hosting world. No, Chris, there was not anything I did in Vercel. I simply linked it to GitHub, connected the project, and clicked on the domain that Vercel gave me automatically. Now, once you're in Vercel, you do have the ability to add your own domain names. So you can click add existing or you can purchase a domain name. I don't recommend purchasing them through Vercel. I only recommend adding existing. And when you add existing, it's going to be just like in high level. It is going to show you the entire process for connecting the domain. It's very, very easy. So, who else has questions about what we've done so far? Anyone have questions? Feel free to raise your hand. I will open my participants window so you can see. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that from an SEO standpoint, there are a couple things that factor in to ranking and everything else. And one of those things is speed. And that's a very important factor in ranking a website. Speed is one of the most critical factors, in my opinion, in ranking a website, because not only does it give you a better score in the capacity of the ranking algorithm, but it actually gives your website more time for the ranker or the scraper to be able to look at your website. What this means is that with more time to be able to look at the website will ultimately get better priority in the search algorithm, and it will more easily be displayed in the search results for Google and Bing and Yahoo. So that is how simple it is. So we just demonstrated setting up a GitHub, connecting it to Lovable, connecting the Lovable code to GitHub, connecting GitHub to Vercel, and then connecting Vercel to the actual website. And then we ran a speed test. And we did all of that in just shy of 20 minutes. I'd say that's pretty impressive. Please, a quick 1 to 3 from Lovable to Vercel. Okay, so from Lovable in our project, we are going to be in our project. We're going to click on the cat icon. From the cat icon, we're going to click configure or add to repository or add to organization. From add to organization, we're going to select our organization and click transfer anyway. From there, we are going to go into Vercel and we are simply going to create a new project. So we're going to simply hit add new project. We're going to select the project of the name of the website we just created and hit import. Once we hit import, that's it. That's all you have to do is import and deploy. And the deploy step is automatic once you log into the next, or once you get to the next step. The deploy step is going to give you the ability to automatically deploy your information and get it out there. That's how hard it is, which is not hard at all, to go from Lovable to Vercel. Corey Hay said, is it bad or unsafe to host personal projects that only you are using on a personal subdomain? Not at all. You can absolutely do that. You can even leave them on just a general Vercel domain. You don't even need to worry about putting them on a personal subdomain. Now, what you wouldn't want to do is save any information to them that's not behind a login wall. That would be potentially dangerous. So you pay for Vercel when you need some additional projects, when you need some more speed, some insights, analytics. For reference, though, I pay $20 a month to Vercel, and I have like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 projects at least in Vercel, all most of which are production projects. So I have like 14 projects. Vercel is the final location of a finished website. That's correct. It is the hosting provider. GitHub is where the code is stored and maintained. Lovable is where the code is edited. Vercel is where the code is served from. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. My next office hours, Bonnie, is going to be on Tuesday and or if I have some time this weekend. Yes, Corey, that's correct. You want to make sure that you have to log in, especially if you're storing sensitive data in something like Supabase or something like that. You always want to make sure that it's behind a login wall in case someone ever stumbles into your cave, essentially. You got to put a door on things. So who has questions? Let me look at the Q&A really quick. That absolutely, Corey, the two-way sync does mean it will update in GitHub as well. Um, GitHub stuff isn't viewable or downloadable to other people automatically by Lovable. Is made sure that it's or Lovable automatically makes sure it's not viewable or downloadable by other people. But you always want to set your repository private. Francisco, Vercel is not what I would use for native mobile apps. Yes, Chelsea, if your website scores a B or a C, you would just want to ask Lovable or Cursor to optimize it. If you find that Lovable isn't updating to Vercel, you just need to redeploy Vercel. Someone said my mic died. Let me look really quick. Can you guys still hear me? Michael, that's your sound. Wah, wah, wah. All right. But yeah, so if Lovable isn't updating to Vercel, typically that means that you just need to redeploy in Vercel. And Jason said, so Supabase sits on the side. What's the role of Supabase? So Supabase is a database that serves content for the website. So when the browser calls the website can ask the database who needs to log in, what content do you have available? The database returns the information. And then when the website gets served, that comes from Vercel to the browser. So the browser calls Vercel, Vercel calls Supabase, Supabase returns to Vercel, Vercel returns to the browser. All right, ladies and gentlemen, does anyone else have any last questions? Again, I apologize for being late. And absolutely, Jason, the link between Supabase and Vercel is in the code. That is correct. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that concludes my period of instruction. Next week, we are going to start on some N8N stuff. We're going to do a little bit more vibe coding. I've got some really, really exciting topics planned over the next coming weeks, and some pretty amazing speakers as well will be joining me. Make sure that you stay in the community and that you are staying in touch with everyone. I'd love if everyone could just make sure. I have used emergent.sh. That is a security framework for websites and servers. Absolutely. To answer Michael's question. But there are some really amazing topics and things that are coming out here in the nearish future. So would super appreciate if everyone could stay in the community, just stay active, post your questions, post what you're working on, comment on other people's posts. Let's keep this thriving. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. Thank you so much for sticking around.